welcome back. Well, our final talk of the day is all about the kitchen garden. I'm delighted to be joined by two guests who both have fabulous gardens where they grow their own food. With me is chef, teacher and cookbook author Rory O'Connell and Catherine Fulvio, chef, cookbook author and cookery school owner. You're both very welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Catherine, in your case, you grew up on a farm.
Yes.
And you still produce your own produce in your home now in Wicklow. Why is it so important to you to grow your own?
For me, it's knowing the source of my food, I suppose, more than anything. It gives me the ability to be creative. I can plant what I want. It's quite experimentative, and that's what I love so much about growing. But also, I think, Miriam, it's not just that I know it's fresh and that it's nutritious, but also I can just pick what I need when I need it. And for me, then, that's lower food waste as well. So I can just go out and take a couple of leaves of salad or a few tomatoes. I'm not buying a half a kilo of tomatoes or whatever as I need them. So, yeah, it works really well for me.
Same for you, Rory. Anyone who follows you knows your love for homegrown produce.
Yes.
Have you always been like that?
I think so, really. And whenever I was growing up, we always had a vegetable garden at home. And, well, before, there used to be a cow as well for milk for the house, but that was gone by the time I arrived. And we always had chickens, so there was kind of a logic to the whole thing. And so if you grow up with food growing around you, you know, it's the mystery is taken out of it in that sense. And maybe we took it for granted that, as Catherine talks about, sort of the immediacy. So it will be, you know, run down to the garden and get a head of lettuce or something like that. And, you know, they again, to use that word immediacy, the freshness of something just taken out of the ground, or a window box, or a hanging basket, or whatever it is an utterly different thing than something that's been languishing, you know, for weeks. And also, because I love to cook, and I'm amazed by the colour of a rose, or the way a tomato starts as a seed, and then, you know, there are these fountains of tomatoes growing down. It just astonishes me.
And actually, I'd like to mention herbs because it's something a lot of people grow at home. And we can see, I think, some of your lovely herbs on screen coming up now. Listen, will you give viewers some tips, Rory, to prolong the life of their herbs so they don't end up going to waste?
Yes, well, there are various different ways. And it's really awful to see things going to waste. And particularly people who are growing their own, and so many people are, you don't want to waste a single thing. So a lot of herbs, you can make them into little, it's kind of like a fancy name called compound butters. It's basically a herb butter. So that could be parsley or chives or rosemary, a little bit of butter sort of in a bowl with the chopped herbs, maybe a little bit of lemon zest and juice, tiny bit of salt and pepper, and make it into roll it in a cracker or put it into a little jar and keep them in the fridge where they'll keep for about a week, or in the freezer for longer. And then you have something you put on a steak or a piece of fish, or loving new potatoes. That's one of the ways. I mean, I dry some herbs, not many. Mint, I would definitely dry. What else would I dry? Marjoram, which is a very favourite herb of mine, I would dry. And tarragon, definitely tarragon. And dried herbs, you know, they have a different flavour, obviously, from fresh herbs, but they're wonderful, and that's what people used to do. I mean, you couldn't get mint or tarragon, you know, in summer, in out of season, you know, in the winter when I was starting to cook. It just didn't happen. So people preserved it, and people preserved to prevent waste, and also to create something delicious.
You love growing your own herbs as well, do you?
Oh, I'm so passionate about herbs. It was the first thing, actually, when I came back to Ballyknocken and took over 20 odd years ago. Miriam, renovated the old farmhouse, and a barn had fallen down. So there was all this mulched old straw in a patch. And I cleared the area and I planted box hedging and did a beautiful herb garden. And it's my pride and joy. I just love it. And I suppose I plant all the usual suspects. So I would have your parsley, your rosemary, sage, all of them, coriander, all of those. But I love things like lemon balm, lemon verbena. I have apple mint there at the moment, chocolate mint. What else? Oh, I have a curry plant at the moment, which is, you just walk past and just smells of curry. I still haven't figured out how to use it properly, but it's just so exotic. Yeah, there's so many wonderful plants that you can grow, that are easy to grow. But the thing is, Miriam, I have to confess, I'm not green-fingered. For me, it has to be something that's manageable. And I tend to lean towards what I can pop in the ground and know it's going to happen. so I don't have to worry too much about it. Of course, I water them and feed them and I weed around and all of that, but I go more for the easy life in the garden, and that suits me perfectly. And as Rory's mentioned, there's plenty of them that grow very easily, like marjoram, oregano. And last year, because of the year that was in it,
Yes.
I invested in a dehydrator. Can you believe that,
They're
Rory?
fantastic things.
A gadget. It's about this size, and it has all these different 9 shelves, Miriam. And I washed and patted dry my herbs and lined them all up, and I dried. And I dried a few things before, but nothing like, I wouldn't say professionally, but dried them properly. And I am still using the dried fennel. The tarragon dried amazingly.
You can get domestic dehydrators as well, because it sounds very chefy and very restauranty in a way. But you can, some of the supermarkets are selling small little ones. So it's a brilliant way of preserving herbs.
And how long would they last for then?
Oh, they'd last for a year.
Yeah.
But so
Really?
many, I think things like rose petals. Roses are delicious, by the way,
Wow.
in all forms. But our rose petals dry beautifully.
Yeah.
So, and, you know...
You brought all these in today now, just so we can get this shot, I think. So you are going to, yes, good. You're going to, what is in that? You brought all that with you today?
Yeah, I ran around the garden this morning very quickly.
Okay.
Before I came up, and everything that's in this bowl, part of everything that's in this bowl is edible. So roses are edible. Now, you don't be, you know, going to...
Do you eat them?
Pardon?
Do you eat them?
Oh, of course, absolutely. In all sorts of forms, fresh like that, dried.
Yeah.
They're used enormously in Middle Eastern cooking and North African cooking. So all sorts of roses. Avoid the ones that are sprayed, obviously. I mean, this is just a fennel, and this
Amazing.
licorice flavoured herb is filling the entire room here with this smell. And that's all edible. Chive flowers, you pick off the individual little blossoms like that, and you get a sweet, sort of incredible oniony flavour. They could go into your butter as well. Elderflower, of course, is all over the countryside. It was regarded as being a weed. That's syrups, ice cream, sorbets, elderflower cordial, millions and millions of things. Marigolds, my poor marigold is a bit shook after the trip from Cork. But anyway, if you believed everything that is written about the quality of marigold, you might eat nothing other than marigold. But I don't know what would happen if you did. Nasturtiums, I mean, these would grow up through concrete. Flowers, leaves, the little seeds, we pickle the seeds to make capers. Mint, other gardeners will also know it grows through concrete. Sage, the beautiful flowers and the beautiful leaves, a bit of roast duck or roast pork, or with pasta, absolutely fantastic. What else is in there that might be sort of unusual? So many flowers actually are edible. Mint, yeah, I think that's most of the things in that little bowl.
Absolutely amazing. And just to say, before I move on to my next question, don't forget, my viewers, that you can submit any questions you may have on Slido, and that can be accessed, of course, by the board via Bloom website or their Facebook page. And I think he gave you a little gift of all those as well.
I have, yes, up from Ballymaloo as well. But there's some wonderful herbs here. For me, I suppose, I grow, as I said to you earlier, the reliables. But the other half of the family, in my case, is Italian.
Okay.
So I lean a little bit towards the Italian. So when it comes to herbs and vegetables, I've got an extra few things that I like to kind of experiment with. So I have cardoons, for example, in the garden, which is a really unusual. They're very popular in Sicily. It's a big stalk. It looks like the artichoke. You cook the stalk and they pane it and deep fry it in Sicily. They do a lot of fried vegetables in Sicily. It's a very healthy lifestyle, lots of veggies. But so I'd have artichokes, cardoons, and the likes. And in the polytunnel that I bought at Bloom a few years ago, I must say. In my polytunnel, I would have then my zucchinis, my aubergines, my chilies, my tomatoes, beautiful brandywine tomatoes. Oh, they're to die for. But on the herb end, I have here the oregano, because I would use a lot of that, and that dries brilliantly. In fact, it's one of the best herbs to dry. And oregano is an incredibly versatile, it's related to the marjoram, but it's a very versatile herb. You can use it with...
Wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, you can
really
use it
wonderful.
direct in salads, or with fish, or with lamb, or anything. You'll see it in all countries around the world. But
Yeah. Actually, Catherine, you mentioned there about chilies. You grow your own chilies. Chilies grow brilliantly in this country. I mean, we should not be importing a single chili. By the way, brides-to-be, male, female, whatever, a herb bouquet of Irish-grown things. Wouldn't it be fabulous?
Yeah.
But chilies, if you've chilies left over, just in your kitchen, red ones particularly, and you think you're going to lose them, don't put them in the fridge. Leave them on the counter and forget about them, your kitchen counter. After 6 months, they will have dried completely. And then you just put them, seeds and all, into your food processor and whiz them, and you have chili flakes. to keep you going through the winter when you don't have fresh chilies.
It's a great idea.
They're wonderful, yeah.
You also, is this true? Do you have a fig tree?
Yes, yeah. Again, playing the Italian card.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
That was just, you know, going out and about, looking for plants. I thought, oh, I'd always like to plant a fig. Found a sunny spot, and lo and behold, it took off. And I get the most delicious sweet figs. I eat them as they are. I make fig jam as well, but to be honest, I love them as they are with a lovely little bit of prosciutto di Parma. Absolutely gorgeous coming into the autumn. And it just brings that lovely bit of colour to your table as well.
And we've obviously spoken about drying herbs and stuff, but Rory, in terms of, I suppose, just preserving other fruit and vegetables, top tips for our viewers.
Top tips, freezing tomatoes. If you grow your own tomatoes, or even if you don't grow your own tomatoes, but buy them, Irish ones, of course, sort of August, September, great value from the greengrocer, and freeze them. They are unbelievable. You do nothing to them, just put them in. Then you take them out whenever, a month's time, 6 months' time, run them under the cold tap or put them into a bowl, and the skins rub off. And then you use them for sauces and stews. It's fantastic. But for growers, it means you don't need to, you don't lose a single thing. Then herbs, some herbs can be, tarragon, for example, you preserve it in vinegar. Because if you like béarnaise sauce, you got to have tarragon vinegar. You know, that sort of thing. What else? Other ways of preserving? I mean, obviously soft fruit, and it's coming into soft fruit season in Ireland now. The strawberries are in properly. Freezing strawberries, there's nothing to it. You just buy nice quality ones and put them in the freezer. Take the little green stalk off the strawberries, ideally, before you freeze them. But with other fruit, like raspberries, they just go in as they are. Currants go in as they are, and then when they're frozen, you can shake them and the stalks come off. So it's amazing how a few small punnets of frozen fruit like that will really last brilliantly throughout the winter. For people who like blueberries for their smoothies, there are wonderful blueberries being grown in Ireland now. They're not in season yet. But, you know, you're avoiding blueberries that are coming from God knows where. But if you've frozen ones, straight in with the yogurt, buzz, 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 and you have your smoothie.
Fantastic. Top tips from you as well, Catherine, on just, I suppose, preserving fruit and veg.
For preserving, I primarily freeze. It's exactly, well, blanch if it's green veg and then freeze them. The fruit I would always freeze, but I also make compotes with my fruit. So I would have quite a bit of apple left, and because we've the orchards as well. So I'd make compotes and freeze the apple. And then you have it later to put in smoothies or to have with your yogurt or to have with your porridge coming into the winter. So it's how to prolong the life. Because, you know, a lot of people did take up growing their own over the last year, and then they find they've a glut. You know, whereas probably before they would have just went and bought that punnet of strawberries. Now they find they've 10 punnets of strawberries. What do they do? And of course, you can make jam as well. I would make a lot of flavoured oils with my herbs as well, and chili oils too. I would make my vinegars. And then for right here and now, I would make a lot of pestos, use a lot of herbs in my pestos as well, just to get them up.
Okay, just to go to some of our questions from our viewers. I'll give this one to you, Rory. One of our viewers has a windowsill. What are the 2 to 3 herbs they should grow in this space?
Right, windowsill. I think definitely chives. Because we love the lovely oniony sort of flavour of chives. And then, you know, when they go to seed like this, you can have the lovely flowers as well. And then at a certain point, you cut them back down to about 2 inches and they'll come again. Parsley is always good. Again, you know, with parsley, if you're using it a lot, you may have to wait for it to sort of regenerate. Thyme is so useful, isn't it? Parsley, you're not going to go far wrong with that sort of trinity of chives, parsley and thyme.
Great.
Meat, fish, vegetables, delicious.
And I'd be thinking of the summer for me, I'd be thinking basil.
Yes,
We
definitely.
have basil.
Yeah.
Coriander.
Yes,
I love fresh coriander.
Yes.
And they would grow okay in windowsill box?
Yeah, daddle.
Sunny spot, absolutely, yeah. Well, actually, on the point of basil freezes well also.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, because it preserves beautifully in olive oil. Almost anything can be preserved in olive oil. Good quality extra virgin olive oil into a jam jar, covered with olive oil, lid on, put in the fridge or the garage. You'll be using
really
preserved basil in January, February, March, April, and May instead of something that's come from God knows where.
Brilliant. Catherine, another question from our viewer. Annette says, I've loads of tarragon and I need some advice on how I can use it.
Oh my goodness, I love tarragon because I love those anise flavours.
Yeah.
And as Rory was saying, perfect to like make a tarragon vinegar, wonderful in a béarnaise sauce, or needed for a béarnaise sauce. But I would love tarragon with fish or with chicken. I think it works incredibly well. I use it in soups, I use it in stews. I dry it, as we were saying, and it preserves for your year. I make the tarragon vinegar and tarragon butter. Yeah, there's so much tarragon and lemon butter.
Yeah, fabulous.
Wow.
When you use the word preserving, people think, oh, that's too fancy, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You can, it's dead easy. With tarragon vinegar, you put it in a jam jar, cover it with nice quality white wine vinegar, put a lid on, and in 2 weeks' time, you've got tarragon vinegar that's going to keep for a year.
Wow.
And, you know, the tomatoes, you open the freezer door, the joy of that, put them in, say, see ya.
Yeah, see you in a year.
In a few months' time, instead of buying a tin of tomatoes,
Take
or a
them
bottle of tomatoes that have come from somewhere else, using Irish tomatoes all winter. It's a no-brainer.
Another question for you both. One viewer says, I love roast Irish lamb, but not sure which herbs to use. Any advice?
Marjoram for me.
Marjoram?
Yeah.
I love rosemary with lamb. I know it's traditional, but it's just for me. Rosemary and garlic.
Yeah.
The more the merrier. It's
And
absolutely.
you like marjoram.
Yeah,
so.
marjoram, yeah, but you know, mint, of course, is very traditional as well.
Yeah.
Tarragon is also very good with lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also do a lovely pistachio and basil pesto that I serve alongside lamb, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So instead of your traditional mint sauce, it's so nice with it. So lamb, you see, takes flavour very well.
Yeah.
So you can kind of go through the herb garden and you'll figure out something that will work with lamb.
Another question from our viewers. Do you have any recipe recommendations for basil?
Any
Recipe recommendations for basil?
Well, at this time of the year, basil pesto, I mean, Catherine was saying about pesto. I mean, really, I don't sound like I'm lecturing, but you should really only make basil pesto when it's in season in Ireland. Because you can make nettle pesto when they're there, you can make parsley pesto, wild garlic pesto, etc. But basil pesto is one of the triumphs of cooking when it's made at the right time of the year. And then, you know, basil goes with so many things: chicken, lamb, other vegetables, courgettes, which are coming into season, aubergines later on. Brilliant.
And for me, just to throw a curveball, basil and strawberries, marriage made in heaven. Absolutely gorgeous together. And I make a basil syrup. So I would take sometimes what are considered savoury herbs and put them in a sweet environment. So this is sugar, water, cooked down to syrup stage, put the basil in at the end, blitz it, it's a vibrant green, and you just drizzle that over your strawberries, or in a cocktail, of course.
And look out as well, I would say, for lime-flavoured basil and lemon-flavoured basil. They are incredible, a revelation. Wow. And those, as Catherine was saying, with strawberries are unbelievable.
Fantastic. Another question from our viewer. I'd like to grow potatoes at home and I'd love to have earlies and the main crops in the harvest next year. Any advice?
Bit late for this year. It's too late for this year, I'm afraid. The thing was, certainly in the countryside when we were growing up, Catherine, you probably remember this, you had to have your spuds in by St. Patrick's Day. That was one of the things. But potatoes are so easy to grow. Go to your local garden centre, buy seed potatoes. You can grow them in a half barrel, in a bucket. Obviously, they love going straight into the ground, as long as they're nice and deep in the soil, really. And it's the joy, particularly if someone hasn't grown. I mean, for an Irish person particularly, going out, it's like you struck gold. You know, it's really wonderful, emotional, very real thing. Pulling.
When's the best time to plant for potatoes?
March, I would say early March.
March, yeah.
I mean, sometimes they grow in earlier, but St. Patrick's Day used to be the cut-off point, but actually you can put them in later, but I think it's too late now, I would say.
And if you wanted to, you could get very creative. There's all sorts of varieties of potatoes that people are growing now, like the fingerling ones and the purple potatoes, and so you can get all sorts of different shapes and different colours, and there's the Mayan golds and all.
Pink fir apples, which are a variety of potatoes.
That's so interesting. Another viewer says, what's the easiest herb or vegetable to grow? I think we asked that before.
A herb, I would say, if a lemon balm seems to me that would come up through concrete. It's this incredible lemon-flavoured herb. A mint will run riot. She'll practically run you out of your own home. What else? They're really easy, Catherine, those two, aren't they?
What vegetable would you use?
Oh, vegetable easy to grow. Beetroot, super. Radishes, unbelievably easy to grow as well. You can grow them just in a seed tray. A chard, which is looks like a spinach on steroids. It's a fabulous vegetable. And
What's
there's
it called?
a variety called rainbow chard as well.
Yeah.
Big, thick stalks and then leafy, shiny leaves. That's really easy to grow. And that's sort of a cut and come. Once you cut it, it'll come back again. So I'd say definitely beets and chards, super easy.
Yeah. And I'd be the same. We've a lot of rainbow chard at Ballynockham, but we'd also have the likes of sorrel, which is a bit more unusual, but you don't have to look at it. Like I say, I'm just like, let it happen. And it does happen. I find oregano really easy to grow as well. Lemon balm I've everywhere, but the oregano is just, and marjoram are very, very you know, non-taxing. They just keep coming back year on year and are usable year on year. Whereas other plants get a bit woody, have to be replenished.
Yeah,
but they're
easy.
Yeah.
Because I'm conscious of people watching you both, and you're both, you know, so talented at what you do. You talk like it's easy to grow all these things. So if someone's watching and they so far have grown nothing, no home produce, top tip, what would they start on?
I would say beetroots. I think you just go and get a packet of seeds, or at this time of the year, maybe it should be little beetroot plants from the garden centre. Pop them in a bucket. You could even grow beetroots in a deepish window box. Definitely the chard that I mentioned.
Yeah.
That's Catherine. Because things like tomatoes and chilies and things, that's more of a long-term, more
Yeah.
complicated thing. Radishes. Buy a packet of radish seeds. Get a seed tray, not only that deep sometimes, and just scatter them on. Just cover them over really gently. And in a couple of miraculous days, if there's a bit of heat and a little bit of water on them, suddenly it turns green, and eventually they'll fatten up to be red Santa Claus type radishes.
Wow.
And that's all it takes. Because the other thing I actually convinced myself when I was growing that, you know, seeds and plants, they're hot-wired. They want to come up.
Yeah.
Give them anything like reasonable conditions and they will.
And they will, yeah.
And I think, Miriam, if you're thinking of next year,
Yeah.
think of kind of the old hardy varieties that have always been native to Ireland, in my opinion anyway. Rhubarb.
Rhubarb?
Yeah, rhubarb. I'm like, make rhubarb sexy again. That's where I'm going. You know, I love rhubarb. And there's a kind of love-hate thing going on with people and rhubarb.
Yes.
But rhubarb, gooseberries or goose gobs, as we used to call them growing up,
Yeah.
and black currants, they're the old traditional varieties, but they're so easy to grow. And they just keep coming back year on year. You just trim the plants a little bit and you don't have to worry about them. And you've got these fruit that are that bit more exotic that, you know, you can't go into your local shop traditionally like your big supermarket and come out with black currants and gooseberries and rhubarb, not so much either.
Yeah.
You know, so I would be kind of veering towards something that's slightly more unusual but easy to grow.
Another question from one of our viewers. Where do you both get your inspiration for what you do in your garden? Were you first, Rory?
Well, I think because I've always been, any house I've ever lived in, more or less, well, since I was a young, you know,
Yeah.
there was a garden there. So that's definitely part of it. And also because I'm, you know, gardening, growing can all be explained scientifically, beautifully, you know, mathematically almost. But still for me, there's a mystery when you put a seed, you know, that you can't even see it so small into the ground or a pot and, you know, give it something like the right conditions. Something just astonishing and miraculous happens. And then if that particular seed happens to be something that you'll eat, it's, for me, it's a gift from a God, whoever your God, whatever you're having yourself type of God. It's so, for me, it's a gift of nature, and that inspires me endlessly.
And where do you get your inspiration, Cal?
I suppose I start at the plate and work backwards. I'm like, oh, what would be tasty? So that inspires me, like the kitchen, what I would use and how I would use what I'm growing. And then I think otherwise for me, it's just the seasons, it's the joy of growing. As Rory said, it's just, like I find myself getting a little antsy around March, kind of going, why isn't something coming up yet? You know, and I know it shouldn't be, but and then where other people are going, oh, it's raining today, I'm going, oh, it's raining, yeah, fabulous, bit of sunshine now and I'll be grand. So for me, it's celebrating the seasons, and it's a lovely, natural, healthy way to enjoy your food. And at the same time, you can benefit from what you grow because you can enjoy the flavours of it in your own kitchen.
You're both an advert because you're both so enthusiastic about it. I mean, you clearly both love what you do. Do you, Rory?
Absolutely. I absolutely love cooking. I love cooking.
Yeah.
But you know what Catherine was saying earlier on, you know, about running down to the garden just to get 2 leaves rather than buying ahead, you know, and throwing it out. You know, so growing can be tied in with sort of good housekeeping.
Yeah.
That to be not misinterpreted. And a really beautiful, again, a sort of frugality, but a really kind of obvious and sensible and sustainable and copped on and delicious frugality.
You love what you do. I've interviewed you a number of times, don't you, Catherine? And the whole thing of using home produce in your cooking, both of you, yeah?
I absolutely love it. You see, but I grew up on it and it's ingrained in me. And I suppose I learned through osmosis from my mother, and I wouldn't know any other way, really. I would get nervous if I didn't have plants in the garden, or if it was like a really dry summer and things started to wither a little. That would make me nervous. Yes, I might run out of food, Miriam.
Another question from one of our viewers. Do you take gardening design into account when gardening, or is the focus more on growing fruit and vegetables only?
Well, I definitely in the herb garden have a plan, and it has a structure, and so every bed has like a centre point, whether it's the bronze fennel that Rory has here and everything else is around it, or whether it's the kind of tea bed.
Yes.
So I plan it properly so that I know that, say, everything in that bed I can use for tea: lemon balm, lemon verbena, mint, and so on, and the roses, all of that to make my flavoured teas. When it comes to the vegetables, yes, it is about rotation and about moving the vegetables around. When it comes to the soft fruits, I kind of have them everywhere, and that's probably because I haven't been that good at designing where to pop them, which, to be honest, if I was to give people advice, it would be better to actually have a plan, because I find myself running from A to B, kind of going, where are the black currants that are in at the moment? But on the other hand, when visitors come to Ballynockin, as they walk around the grounds, they find alpine strawberries here, rhubarb there, summer savoury, broad beans. It's all like it's a walkway of exploration. So yes, it's I suppose it's nature's design.
And you?
Well, I think sometimes if you walk into a beautiful herb garden or vegetable garden, particularly for people who haven't grown before, and they look and think, oh, this is like Versailles, I'm never going to get there. So whereas it can be beautiful, and Catherine's garden is beautiful, but just thrust it in a bucket or a window box or something to start off with, and then if the design can come afterwards, fantastic. But get something growing is the thing, I'd say. Yeah.
Final question to you both from our viewers. How much time do you both spend in the garden to keep your gardens looking and being as great as they are? Like, is it very time consuming? I'll start with you, Catherine.
It depends on the time of the year.
Yeah.
So it's like over the winter, it's nice and quiet in the garden. Picks up then from about March onwards for me. You've got to remember, I do have 2 teenagers at home, Miriam, which is very useful.
Excellent.
And actually, my last instructions before I left to come up here today was, don't forget to water those strawberries, as I left. No, it depends on the time of the year, and also picking the fruit in season. Like last year, because of what was happening, we found we had an absolute overflow of strawberries and nowhere to use them because our business was closed. So it was getting out in time to pick them. Yeah. So you just have to have a plan and know it's going to take a bit of time. But I think Rory's advice is so important. Start small. Just start with the bucket and just get the feel of it, rather than kind of going deep into it and finding actually it's an overwhelming job, because it's very easy to grow your own.
And Rory, final?
Well, I love what I do during the day anyway. I love all that. But I find gardening is just like balm, really. Oh. So, so I'll go out in the evening for a couple of hours, and some evenings I won't if it's raining, I love it. Yeah.
And to go full circle on our theme of talks today, have you found during the past 15 months, both of you, it's been a great saviour almost, the garden? Yeah,
well, I just feel so unbelievably fortunate that I have a bit of space around my house where I have a lovely garden. I also feel fortunate that I live within distance. I'll be able to swim all of the time in the sea. But yeah, it is absolutely. And there's something about, if you think about it, stop and think something growing and nature and the meaning of life, and you can get all philosophical about it. But yes, it's an incredible balm, I would say.
And you, Catherine?
Yeah, I felt when everything stood still last year in particular, there was the regularity of the garden, and life kept coming and plants kept growing and plants kept producing, and it brought a normality and a calmness to my life.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been brilliant having you both here today. Catherine and Rory, thank you so much. It was really insightful, and that session, I loved it, and I'm feeling inspired to actually get out there and start growing something myself. And that brings today's Bloom at Home live talk series to a close. I think our brilliant guests have covered just about every gardening topic this afternoon, and I hope we've inspired you to get out and get growing wherever you are this summer. You can browse the 7 beautiful garden designs in easy steps to dream gardens on boardbeabloom.com, and you can watch back any of these talks you missed on Board Bea's YouTube channel. Finally, it would not be Bloom without seeing an array of gardens and plants. And as part of our competition with RTE, we've already seen hundreds of your beautiful gardens and plants on social media. Well, the competition is open until tomorrow at midnight, and there are 6 €500 vouchers for your local garden centre up for grabs. So to enter the competition, all you have to do is post a picture or a video of your gardening efforts on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook using the hashtag #BloomAtHome, and you can tag @BoardBeaBloom. So on behalf of the entire Bloom team, thanks so much for watching. We hope to see you next year in the Phoenix Park. Until then, slán.